Hello, 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 and welcome back. I think most of us have heard these words said before in these conditions. You ain't shit. You ain't never gonna be shit. Ain't nobody else gonna want you. Ain't nobody else gonna treat you right. Anybody else, you're gonna be lucky to ever find somebody else like me. You will never find nobody else like me. You can't do better than me. You can't do this by yourself. Don't nobody want you. Your family don't love you. Have you heard any of these words? You ugly, you fat, any of these words with a very angry voice. Like when someone is angry and they're giving you verbal abuse. I want to talk about this today because something over the past few days where I have not been dropping any videos has been something that's really pressing on me. So I wanted to come here with you guys here on YouTube and discuss some of these issues and some of these thoughts that I've been having. Now let's look at the reason why you clicked on this video for the beginning. And it's because I do want to look at how verbal abuse is also another form of a love spell. Now, when we get into the terms of verbal abuse is generally brought on by some sort of anger, someone being mad. And I did some research, and I'm going to post it right here. You'll see that the frequency that anger resonates on or starts with is 440 hertz. And I'm also going to add right here where you see that most of Western society, the music is also under 440 hertz, which most of us already knew. So let's look at something even deeper. We're going to go layer by layer with this. Now let's look at it this way. If we have verbal abuse, which are words, and we all know that words are spells, and it resonates under that 440 frequency. And then if you have music, secular music, Western music that resonates under that 440 hertz as far as the tune, right? The hertz. And then within that frequency, that sound, you also have the words that are being spoken, which is also negative, right? So all of these words with these tones and this negative energy are spells. So let's just take point in scenario, right? You have someone, a young person who is verbally abused at home, okay? And then after the verbal abuser leaves the home, they're turning on something like Sexy Red or Glorilla that's also talking negative stuff. They unsubconsciously and self-unknowing are embedding and surrounding themselves with the energy of anger, depression, fear, sadness, depression. I can go on. Now that we have discovered that, some of us already remember that words are spells, right? And we already know that music as well are spells because of the words. So when you look at verbal abuse from someone who is verbally abusive to someone, they are also under a spell. Now the verbal abuser most likely will always come back and say, I love you, and I don't mean to. So in their world, in the way that their brain's operating, they are unable to emotionally obtain their rage because their love is so blinded and so dark that they use these words to break down the person's awareness and confidence in themselves because they want that person to rely on them because they want that type of dependent love. These type of spells with these words, I believe, are very detrimental to the human psyche as they grow and develop spiritually and physically, mentally as well. And, I'm only speaking on this mainly because of experience. Growing up in a household where my dad was very mentally, verbally, and physically abusive, these are things as I've gotten older in my age and start to put things together. And, it's some things that only come together. And these young girls unaware, and sometimes these older women are unaware, and they stay in these relationships longer than they have to because they're not understanding that they're under a spiritual stronghold and they're having these rituals and magic being done to them. These words that are being spoken over them are being tied to entities and deities that work in these lower vibrations. Therefore, these strongholds of fear and lack of confidence and lack of self-worth begin to take strongholds over these individuals, and therefore they find it hard to leave. And they begin to get comfortable in fear leaving their abusers simply because of that power they have placed over them. And the same thing with the music and the words. That's why you have so many people that walk around with anger issues, because if they're already angry and they listen to the music that's angry as well, it only boosts what they already have, and they have no chance of being able to honestly come out of that energy because it's surrounding them as well. So I just want to make this brief video, and I hope someone comes along and possibly piggybacks off of this and adds more to it. But verbal abuse is the same as love spells that's going backwards, because the abuser is taking on all of the control through their words. They're not having to use outside energy. So let's remember the saying that sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt us, because words do hurt us. So when you start to look at someone who may have the tendency to be abusive with their words, right? And you have someone who hides it very well, something like a narcissist. But see, the way I want to tell my story right now, I really don't think I want to expose everything from my childhood right now, because it's one thing when you have an abuser, verbal abuser, who's also into dark magic, and it's one thing when you just have someone who's verbally abusive in domestic violence and domestic abusive to you, physically abusive to you, and they was trained and seeing that growing up as a child. So when you see that, you have to understand they're working under an influence, another entity, another deity, just as well as Hollywood is working under another entity, another deity. This is where when someone is doing a love spell on you and they're working out of obsession, because, also verbal abuse is also obsession, because they want to break you down to make sure that, they're obsessed with their victim. They're obsessed with them to the point where they want them to be assured of themselves so they can just have them all to themselves, feeling less worthy, less confident, less of who they are. So when you have someone doing a love spell on you, they're trying to break down your self-will to make the person they're doing a love spell on only want them and no one else, and to be crazy about them. So I'm tying in that verbal abuse is another form of love spells, because it works under the same frequency of 440, which is a negative frequency that the Western civilization also works under. So when you have someone that's verbal abusive, make sure that you're looking at the spirits that works behind the people, because we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities. So know that they themselves have been oppressed and possibly entangled with a entity that's using them to drain you, because again, energy vampires are also narcissists, which are also abusive and also verbal abusers. So you have to be able to look at the whole setup and see each layer, and not just look at it from the 3D dimension. You have to see each layer that plays a part in this relationship that you're in. And once you're able to get to the root of the problem, once you're able to see the spirit that is at work behind the problem, you'll then be able to know how to deal with this issue and how to get yourself out. And some women, they don't have that insight, so they stay in these relationships, and then they even have people who may become earth angels and reveal this information to them, give them the way out, show them the light, give them an opportunity to know, through their experience how they were able to escape. But because the entity within them is so strong and has so much dominion over them, they still go back to the vomit, which they prayed to get out of, but because they have been dependent on the convenience of the person that the entity is using, they stay victimized in that situation, and therefore they become fearful of how they will live, how they will pay their bills, if they will come and kill them, all because of an entity that's been attached to them through a lower vibration, which is that 440 frequency. But this is just something I want to make a little short video on, guys. If y'all want me to go deeper into this, please just go ahead and leave a comment over. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. My name is Goddess Elizabeth, and this is another Goddess with No Filter. So until next time, y'all stay favored. Y'all have a great one. Bye.